Three completely different people approach the same video game system, all running the same game. One player leaves the system almost immediately. One leaves after merely beating the main story of the game, and the other is not seen for hundreds of hours until coming out and claiming victory in the form of 100% completion. There could be a lot of reasons why these three players had such varying reactions. Most would quickly point to gameplay, physics, and art styles being the major contributing factors. But there is one facet of game design that is often overlooked when talking about situations like this: objectives. Many people overlook this when discussing their opinions on a game, which is odd considering just how important it is to the overall structure of a game and how players will respond to it. Allow me to deliberate. 1, 2, 3, jump! Objectives are extremely important in games. Handling them wrong can risk completely losing the attention of players. If the players don't feel like they are achieving anything, they will not have the desire to continue playing the game. I feel three main archetypes can be conjured up to explain most games' objective designs: linear, open, and player-driven. These three archetypes mainly affect how the world and levels are designed, along with how adding difficulty to the experience is handled. The linear objective archetype is when objectives are clearly laid out, as is how to achieve them. Platformers are usually good examples of this, as they commonly have some form of end goal at the end of a level. Typically with this archetype, you know exactly where you're going. The experience difficult with achieving your objective comes with the path it takes to get there, whether that's complicated puzzles, challenging platforming segments, or increasingly tough enemy placement and design. Open objectives lie on the complete other end of the spectrum. This design generally disperses the game's main and side objectives over a large open world. This is also a situation where the difficulty usually lies with discovering where the objectives are, in comparison to the linear archetype, where you might have to fight a boss in order to reach the objective. Commonly in open games, the boss fight is the objective. Great examples of this archetype include Metroidvanias and of course the open world genre. And finally, the player-driven archetype. This is quite different from either archetype that came before. Rather than developers and designers of the game meticulously designing both what the objective will be, but also the path to get it, player-driven games allow the players to decide what those objectives will be. There also usually isn't a way to beat the game. Some may have a few boss fights or other things along those lines, but they generally only serve to add new options and abilities. Survival and sandbox titles are by far the best examples of this archetype, allowing the player to do and create whatever they wish, which can range from an extravagant mansion to a heavily mutated dinosaur. These archetypes are not only important to designers, but also the players themselves. Each one requires different skills and mindsets for maximum enjoyment. It is normal for people to have one or two that they either really enjoy or really don't. What is engaging to one will turn away another. This can be seen especially well with games that receive a huge boost of popularity accompanied with mostly positive feedback. Mostly being the key word. There are of course many reasons why someone may not like a game despite seemingly everyone else enjoying it. But there is a large portion of negative feedback a game might receive that might seem extremely useless at first glance. Boring. My entire motivation for creating this video was when I was thinking about my experience with a game called Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight came out in 2017 to critical acclaim, and I finally picked it up earlier this year after the recommendations from a couple of friends. But in the span of 6 months, I only managed to sink 8 hours into it. I couldn't get into the game no matter how many times I tried, and I really couldn't understand why. I absolutely adored the game's art style and gameplay, with the few boss fights I experienced and my time being an absolute delight. Everything on paper was saying I should love the game, but practically that wasn't coming true. It finally hit me that the game's use of the open objective archetype is what ultimately led me to feeling disconnected for a large percentage of my playtime. Boredom perfectly encapsulates what I was experiencing in my own perceived downtimes. When left to wander the world searching for a boss fight or pathway, I felt objectiveless. Feeling you have no objective means you feel as if you have nothing to do, which then instills boredom. The time I spent in Hollow Knight was mostly me forcing myself to play it through unbearably long sessions of wandering around the game's sprawling map out of pure desire to enjoy the game before eventually quitting, picking it back up again, and then quitting shortly after. The first time I opened it in over 5 months was to record footage for this video. Compare that with my experience with Celeste. Celeste makes use of a linear archetype to design levels with a focused endpoint. I felt compelled to continue through the game and finish the 5-hour base campaign in mere days with the itch to go back to 100% the game. Personally, I need games to either tell me clearly what to do or let me choose what to do, meaning a game like Hollow Knight, no matter how much I enjoy the gameplay, will ultimately bore me. And while I'm like that, others may be the exact opposite. A straight and clear objective with a straight and clear level will seem too simple to them to be enjoyable. Ultimately, objectives are just one of the many facets of game design that will make players either enjoy or not enjoy any particular game. There is no way to design objectives in a way that every player will find enjoyable. They are truly subjective. Returning to the 3 people at the beginning of this video, I hope you can understand why they had such differing experiences with the same game. Simple truth is, one of them couldn't engage with the objectives the game had, found them engaging enough, and one absolutely loved them. This can happen with any game made by any developer in any genre.